Good morning, Rod Fleming in the Philippines, and the cupboard is open behind me. Sorry, you'll just have to deal with looking at my clothes. Remember, please, we do need the money, so try to help. Just a wee something, Price for a couple of pints, it always helps, and I really appreciate it. The list of places you can send to are up, and they are growing, so please send a little something. Anyway, today I learned that it was Ray Blanchard's birthday, 77 years old. So the first thing I want to say is congratulations, Ray. I really sincerely wish you many, many more. Your work has been tremendous, and I know you've received a great deal of flack, most of it unjustified. But in your personal life, I wish you all the well. I think it's fantastic. You're 77. Keep cracking on. You give us hope. You give us hope, man. You really do. Anyway, I wanted to look back a little bit at what was going on with the whole Blanchard typology and the HSDS AGP thing. And to do that, I think you need to look a little bit at history. If you go back to the 1970s and the 80s, there was a big problem because many therapists would simply not help people in certain categories. Now, the problem was, as I say, there were differences in the way that professionals were looking at this question of what was generally called transsexualism at the time. Some would not treat people who had a history of homosexual relationships, like when males, that is, who wanted to appear to be women, who had sexual relationships with men, because these particular therapists said, "Oh, you're just a gay boy, get used to it." On the other hand, if the people who are coming forward, other therapists would say, "Are you married? Have you had relationships with women? If you've had relationships with women and you still like women, you can't possibly be transsexual. We can't treat you." And so there was this dichotomy, which landed in a great deal of unfairness. Let's be honest. Now, you may think what you like about autogynephiles or HSTS, but at the end of the day, everybody's human and they all deserve fair treatment. Ray Blanchard saw that and said, "No, I'm going to have to find a way that can give us a blanket diagnosis that we can use," right? And so that blanket diagnosis was in fact gender dysphoria. And what he basically said was, look, whatever the individual type of gender dysphoria is happening here, it's still gender dysphoria, it's still a treatable condition, and we should treat it. And he then went down and he showed how homosexual gender dysphoria and autogynephilic gender dysphoria occurred, and said, what is actually happening here is that these conditions, which are separate and distinct and have nothing to do with each other, can cause very similar effects in the individual. We call this gender dysphoria. That means I can give you a diagnostic tool that you can use, because basically for other professionals, to ensure that your clients get the best possible treatment and care. Now, obviously, some people got that totally the wrong way around, but hey, autogynephiles are famous for that sort of thing. What you need to understand is that there had been many attempts to try to explain this dichotomy between HSTS and AGP before. It wasn't a new thing. Many scientists, many researchers had looked at it and gone, I wonder what's going on here. And one of the earliest attempts to discover what was going on was the Jungian one. And in Jung, what we're looking at is a thing called anima possession. Jung considers that within each male there is a female particle, which he calls the anima. In each female there is a male particle, which he calls the animus. And when these are in balance, when these are working properly within the whole of the psyche, then it's all fine, it's all ordered, and everybody gets on fine with their lives. If the anima or the animus becomes too strong, it causes either anima or animus possession, and this can have significant consequences. Unfortunately, that didn't really explain the nuts and bolts side of it. I mean, why? You could see that as applying differently to different types. Homosexual, transsexuals, they're feminine, they're truly feminine natures, their female side is taken over completely. On the other hand, you get autogynephiles who were married, and I mean, have they just suddenly become homosexual, or are they not homosexual at all? And many autogynephiles are in fact homophobic. Many autogynephiles really hate the thought of being touched by men. They're actually androphobic. So how could they be? How could they fit this description? Ray Blanchard basically, like I said, he took this and went, right, no, okay, what we're going to do is lump them all together and then show you how to deal with them. And Professor Mike Bailey, who's a really great guy, and you should read his stuff. Mike Bailey, in his book, The Man Who Would Be Queen, he stated that he was very impressed by Blanchard's work, and he said it was work of genius, which I agree with. But he said that the way this was so clever was that, in taxonomy there are two approaches, which Mike Bailey called splitting and lumping, and it's a very important part of the book. And in splitting, that's, you look at all the little differences between, you've got, I don't know how many flowers in your garden, and you look at the different, and say, that one's a little bit different from that one. That one's bright red, and this one over here, bright yellow. Are they the same, or have we got two different things going on here? And that is one of the ways that taxonomy proceeds. And the other way is by lumping. And then that, you take all of the examples in front of you, and you say, what have they got in common? What makes them? What might make them the same? Right? So splitting and lumping. And what had happened prior to Blanchard was that most of the attempts to explain this had all proceeded by splitting. And so you'd had all this fracturing of different, maybe it's this little thing here, and maybe it's that, and maybe there are 100 different types of transsexualism, Ray Blanchard said, no. That just is overcomplicating things. It's making it far too difficult. We need to lump things together so that we can understand what's going on. And when he did that, he came up with the idea of gender dysphoria, which is the discomfort that an individual feels at presenting in a particular gender. Which sounds innocuous, it's like, how come it took nearly 100 years to figure that one out? Well, it did. He then went along and he said, right, now that we've got that, we can start to explain how all of the other, so by that stage posited, forms can be incorporated into it. And he looked at HSTS, it's homosexual transsexualism, was well understood, well described, and is still the thing that most people understand when you say transsexual. They go, small, pretty, feminine, all of these sort of things, and they go, well, that's transsexual. And then they meet Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, and they go, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so it's a bit like, oh, well, it's a different kind of it's a different provocation of gender dysphoria. So Ray then, having gone this far, sorry Ray, I'm calling you by your first name, hope you don't mind, said, no, we're going to have to do some analysis here and figure out how all the other different types that have thus far been, proposed, actually might fit into this model. And doing that, he came up with 3 different sexualities within autogynephiles. HSTS we can leave to one side, we know what they are. HSTS is an absolutely extreme, or if you like, fulfilled form of male homosexuality or female homosexuality. They are basically males who are so homosexual, they're actually girls. And vice versa. And I'm not going to get into some argument with new gay men here about, how they think it's all right for these boys to be forced to take testosterone and all the rest of it. I disagree with you guys. We'll live with it. But it was an easy one to lump. We went, they're all bloody the same. And actually, in practical terms, when you know quite a few HSTS, then they are actually all the same. It's like, you couldn't have put a fag paper, that's a cigarette paper, by the way, to a British person, in between them. They're all the same. Tiny variations and differences, but some like big hairy guys, and other like, square-jawed guys, but the actual differences are minute. That wasn't the case in the whole other lot, which had now been identified as being a separate category, but still produced autogynephilia. So Ray Blanchard said, well, is there something we can find that really links them together, that you can use the lumping procedure to bring all those together so we can make this theory work? Obviously, that's easy with HSTS, but, there is an awful big variation in the expression of autogynephilia. It's not at all, a straightforward, simplistic thing. It has lots of variety, it has lots of different facets and lots of different representations and behaviors. it becomes complicated. So Blanchard went to look at one of the things that I think this is one of the things that autogynephiles often resent, but it's still true. And he said that there's always, in autogynephiles, there's always some sort of link to fetishistic transvestism. At some stage in their life, these guys who are proposing to be women have taken pleasure in their bodies, they've masturbated, while dressed as women or while imagining themselves to be women. Right? And so he came up with autogynephilia. He said, okay, what about we propose that autogynephilia is a man's propensity to be aroused by the thought or image of himself as a woman? And bingo, it works perfectly. You can bring all the different forms of autogynephilia into this umbrella and they will work. It will work. Remember, there are 3 different sexualities also identified by Blanchard, and those are heterosexual, that is, they're attracted to women. If we're talking with autogynephiles are nearly all men. Heterosexual, that is, they're attracted to women. Pseudo-homosexual, that means they're attracted to men, but only when they're in role as a woman, and what is called analoerotic. Sometimes people call that asexual because it's easier to say, I think, but it's not really asexualism at all. These people are still having plenty of sex. It's just all in their heads. They don't have sex with partners, but it's all inside their skulls, which is fine. That's fine. They are completely, if you like, autoerotic. And in addition to that, Blanchard devised the 4 classic different types, which usually don't appear uniquely. They usually appear in combination, but they are identifiable as different types. Sorry, the dog ate my teeth. I ain't been rich enough to get some new teeth. You can always donate. Anyway, leaving that aside. And these are obviously transvestic, where the hit is being dressed as a woman and in some way gaining sexual pleasure from that. The next one is anatomical, where your turn on is the idea of having a woman's body. And then there is physiological, whereas the turn on is the idea of having a woman's bodily function. And these guys, these individuals will often, wear panty liners, sanitary pads, and pee into them and urinate into them. Because that is like, oh yeah, that's what a woman does. She does. I mean, it's not what a woman does. We know it's not what a woman does, but it works for them. Go back. Right. And the 4th type that Blanchard explained was behavioural. And in this, the person would carry out behaviours which he thought were, typical of women. So, for example, the famous example is knitting. Knitting can become an erotic activity, and lots of other things. The act of putting on makeup. It's partly transvestic, but it's also behavioural. And they would do things that they think would be womanly, if you like. Now, that's your 4 types there. You've got your transvestic, your anatomical, your physiological, and your behavioural. Now, in 2014-ish, I think it was 2014, Machiavellian and Anne Lawrence came up and they said, look, this isn't enough. And some people said, actually it is enough, but it's fair enough to split and make one new category at that point, which they called interpersonal. So now you have 5. Interpersonal is the business of getting sexual reward for a man when other people relate to him as a woman. You understand? So, I mean, and sometimes they don't even, it's not necessary for them to actually dress as a woman. I mean, if you go online, there's loads of people on social media who are presenting as women. They're not women at all. They're autogynephilic men expressing this kind of interpersonal autogynephilia, where their hit is that people think they're women. You follow? So I thought I was kind of resistant to this at first because, we spent so long trying to get rid of all these categories, and it was like, oh God, I'm going to put another one back in. But it's justified. It was justified. Mike and Billy and Anne Lawrence were absolutely right to do this. And then sometime later, I've proposed another. I'm just a pundit, by the way, so nobody pays any attention to me. But I've proposed another category of autogynephilia, and that is what I call Machiavellian. And Machiavellian, and that's become really important lately. Machiavellian autogynephiles get pleasure from living by proxy, right? By grooming younger people or other males into being autogynephilic, right? Sometimes here you'll find that they are actually managers for troops of pageant performers, because lend them money for stuff, get the money back. But mainly it's like, they're I used to think that we're best called the mother hens, because they kind of look after other ones. But actually it's a lot darker than that. It really is Machiavellian. You'll find that, for example, many older AGPs will try to insert themselves into the debate regarding young HSTS. Debbie Hayton, for example, Deb's mate Hayton, who's inserted himself into the debate about HSTS young boys. Hayton knows absolutely nothing about HSTS. Hayton is a classic transvestic autogynephile, possibly a little bit of interpersonal in there as well. He doesn't know the first thing about HSTS. He doesn't even begin to understand it. He's never been with a man. He's never desired a man. How could he know what it's like to be a homosexual? It's so basic. And yet these people get believed, they get listened to, because they are so plausible. Oh, look at me. And this happened to me. Buggers didn't transition till they were 40 and had 3 kids or whatever. It's like, you're talking, they are presuming to give opinions about people who are, in their teens and still struggling to find out about themselves. And I'm not saying that every boy child who displays sex non-conforming behaviour is necessarily transsexual, and I have never said that. What I've said is that some are, and they deserve proper respect, and not to be just swept under the carpet by the likes of Hayton, because, it doesn't really fit my model, does it? So can't possibly exist. After all, if you're an AGP, then everything has to run by your model. And you'll find that AGPs are constantly trying to find ways of incorporating other men into this weird model of theirs. Like, you do that. You date an HSTS, you must be autogynephilic. And then they'll take statistics and stuff, and bogus, it's often bogus, often manipulated, whatever. Anything that can support their fallacious case that actually we're completely normal. We're really so normal. We're normal people. And all you men who do whatever else you do, you're the abnormal ones because you're not accepting that you're autogynephilic too. Most men are not autogynephilic. All men have the equipment to be autogynephilic because autogynephilia uses the same sexual erotic targeting system as we all use. It identifies the ideal other, the erotic target in a man. It's a heterosexual man. This is going to be a particular type of woman. Whereas most of us would be like, I'll go out on a Saturday night, and if I see a girl like that, maybe see if I can buy her a drink, take it further if she wants, whatever. You might marry a girl like that, she might become your life partner. It's all part of the deal. That's what gender is. It's a mating system. That's all it is. Don't listen to feminists and all that bullshit about how gender was invented to suppress women. No, it wasn't. Gender was invented so that women who need to have their eggs fertilized could attract men to come and do it. That's it. There's nothing complicated about this. It's normal. We are animals. And it's about bloody time people recognize that we're animals. This sort of thing happens all over the animal world. Why would humans be different? Leaving that one aside. So what we have here is, we have to go back and thank Ray again, because prior to this, it's all completely confused. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. In fact, within autogynephilia, we can take many of the prior understandings and use them. We can use them in psychoanalysis. Jungian is extremely useful, It can be very helpful to try to explain to a man that what's going on is that he has this part of him that is, the anima. It's female. And, most men keep that under control. But sometimes it goes wrong. They don't keep it under control. And by the way, I'd just like to say at this point that being autogynephilic is not a choice. All men could do it. We all have the equipment necessary to do it. We don't know why, in some men, that triggers into full-blown autogynephilia. Could be an environmental thing. Could be something like in that it's something to do with, childhood environment or youth environment where the exposure to whatever, to perhaps to certain kinds of porn, perhaps to violence, whatever. We don't know. We really do not know, and it's a very difficult area to research because autogynephiles themselves are incredibly secret. I mean, they don't like telling you anything. But leaving that particular difficulty aside, autogynephilia isn't a choice. These men don't go out and choose to be autogynephilic. I mean, they might occasionally, in ignorance, they might do things that make it worse. I mean, I've just said things like, if you're using sissy porn or sissification porn, you're basically holding a loaded gun to your head and hoping it doesn't go off. And I really don't even think about going near that. And same things and you'll hear men saying this, that, they thought they'd like to know what it felt like for the woman during sex. And they think, I'm just being empathetic. Actually, that's not empathy at all, that's autogynephilia. And you do not want to encourage that. So what happens is that really often through ignorance, they encourage the autogynephilia, and then when it actually comes out in strength, it just takes over. They don't have the strength to fight it and to put it back in its box. They don't. And that's partly because they are actually quite weak as men. They're weak. They don't have a strong enough self-ideation as men. And when you live in a society like the United States today, or the United Kingdom, where being a man is so vilified, where it's like, no, the last thing on the planet you want to be is a man. And if you are a man, then a lot of jobs will be closed off to you. Because, we only hire women and ethnic minorities these days, that sort of thing, then, you are literally encouraging men to be autogynephilic. I've seen I've dealt with cases where the autogynephilic artifact, which is the second personality that is invented inside the autogynephile's mind to play the role of his lover, the point at which she takes over. Hang on, come in. Oh, it's just the wind. It's a bogle. It's a bogle. It is. Anyway, at the point at which she takes over, it's terrifying. It's a very frightening thing to watch, and it must be absolutely frightening for the man who suffers this, because he's going to lose himself. He's losing control. He can't control it any longer. I have never experienced it, but I have watched it, and it seems very much like being, imagine that you were in a real fast car, and I have driven some real fast cars, and you're approaching a bend and the brakes fail, which has happened, and you basically, it's like, I don't have control anymore. This thing is going as fast as it possibly can, and I can't slow down for that bend. I've lost control, and terrible things are going to happen because I lost control. That, I think, is kind of related to what it must be like at that point for the autogynephile when his artifact that's it. It got you now. And once that has happened, it's very, very difficult to excise you. I don't think you can. I think that rolling that particular event back, no. If you want to counsel autogynephilia, you need to start before it. There is a point, a really important point in autogynephilia that is so critical, and it needs to be more talked about. It's when the artifact gets a name. When the man in question names the artifact. Actually, she names herself. It's not really him, it's her. When she reveals her name, she actually adopts a real persona at that point. She becomes an identity. And then after that, you might be able to control her, but you are not going to just get rid of her. I mean, I will try and help people to control this, but they have to recognize that once they have actually let it become, a self-identified persona. Yeah, I know it's them. I do know it's them. I know it's just assembling bits of men, the men that they're hosts, such that they kind of feel and look like women. But for the poor man in the middle of this, it's very, very hard to fight. Difficult thing to do. You will not be able to do it on your own. That's for absolutely certain. You will not be able to do it on your own. And it's even worse because we live in a culture where it's encouraged. My work my place of employment is absolutely on board with me transitioning. That's fine. And they'll even, it's part of the work insurance that we can get that. And you go, how the blazes is that helping? You know, that's what happens when wokeism takes over corporations. Terrible. Anyway, enough. I just wanted to say happy birthday to Ray. And I hope you have many, many more. You're a brilliant scientist, and you're a very funny man. You've got a terrific sense of humour, just as dry as mine. And as a fellow dry humorist, you know, I love that. And to go over what his work meant, we can look at the forms of gender dysphoria, and we can discuss them in terms of Jungian analysis. We can even Wixley Hupp, you know, he's been around the internet for ages talking about his masochistic emasculation fetish. I mean, he's right. That does exist. That's there. It's an element of autogynephilia. Many autogynephils have this masochistic need for self-emasculation. And a lot of that does come from the fact that they live in a society where, you know, being a man is so condemned. And it's like, oh, well, if I want to fit into this society, I have to negate my manhood. And all this sort of absolute nonsense. It's awful. It's terrible. And it needs to stop. Anyway, that's enough for today. I hope you're fine. You're seeing my geggy again. We won't all do them all like this, but I just wanted to get that out because it's quiet. You know, we have a shooting range next door, so sometimes it ain't quiet. It's like Bosnia, you know. But leaving that aside, may your God go with you, or, if you'll let me, your goddess. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.